Alright, the Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about Daredevil Season 2 on Netflix. Daredevil Season 1 showed up on Netflix in 2015, I think. It was a 13-episode season, and just recently, within the last couple of weeks, by the time I get this posted, it's gonna be like a month that this season has been out, Season 2. And if you'll recall, Season 1 I thought was darn near flawless. There were a couple of minor issues that I had with Season 1, and at least one of the problems that I had, when I went back and rewatched it, I realized that my complaint was invalid, that what I was complaining about was actually answered in the show, and that was an invalid complaint. So Season 1, very nearly the most perfect, best superhero TV show of all time. Season 2, quite a bit less perfect. I have quite a few issues with this season that if and when I do go back and rewatch Season 2, I don't think that it's going to be one of those situations like Season 1 where I'll say, oh, okay, that was answered way back in the first episode of the season and I just didn't realize it. There's a lot going on in this season, so it's going to be really hard for me to explore and dissect this season and talk about what I liked and did not like. But I think when I get right down to it, the nitty-gritty of the season is it reminds me a lot of Arrow Season 2. And people who just absolutely loathe Arrow and are really passionately in love with Daredevil are probably, they all just collectively had a heart attack that I mentioned these two shows in the same sentence. But Arrow Season 2 spent like 4 or 5 episodes trying to set up the Flash as this new player in the DC TV verse, and then they're trying to set up that he's going to have his own show a few months after the end of Arrow Season 2. And I remember complaining about that when I was watching Arrow Season 2, saying, okay, this is kind of a problem because you've got a lot of stuff going on with Slade and the Mirakuru subplot and all of that, and you're taking time away from that to try and set up this new superhero in his own show. And I was saying it would be much better if you just start the Flash in his own show, and then you can have these guys cross over as many times as you want, but don't take that much screen time out of Arrow Season 2 to set up the Flash. And I feel like the exact same thing is going on here with Daredevil Season 2 with the Punisher. And as far back as when they first announced that the Punisher and Elektra were going to be feature players in Season 2, I was afraid that that was the direction they were going to go. And now, it's not quite as bad as an Arrow, because there is at least some good thematic stuff going on here between the Punisher and Daredevil. There's one episode in particular where the Punisher has Daredevil tied up on a roof, and they basically spend the entire episode talking about and debating their differences, and why Matt doesn't kill and why the Punisher does kill. And I thought that was a fantastic episode that really explores both of these characters and how they differ and why they do what they do. Beyond that, I felt like this season was giving us a whole lot of, hey look, it's the Punisher. You like these other grim and gritty street heroes like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Daredevil. You want a Punisher Netflix series because that's probably in the pipeline. And almost half of this season feels like it's just setting up the Punisher for his own Netflix show. Now, I don't know if Punisher is absolutely, with all 100% certainty, getting a Netflix show, but this felt like it was really trying to set him up for his own series. There's some stuff here that goes down that is not answered in this season, and it feels like it's setting these mysteries up for either Daredevil Season 3 or for Punisher Season 1. And that's another problem that I have with this season that I didn't have with Season 1. Season 1 left a few minor things hanging for future stories to tackle. For example, Madame Gao just kind of vanishes, and I know a lot of people were thinking that Madame Gao was going to end up being tied with the Iron Fist series. Well, here we are now a year later, and Iron Fist, we still know next to nothing about that series. It's going to be, I think, one of the last Netflix series to come out, so I don't know if Madame Gao is going to be in Iron Fist or not, but you had just a few very minor things that were set up in Daredevil Season 1 that were not resolved in Season 1. But by and large, Season 1 felt like its own complete story. Season 2 absolutely does not. Regarding the Punisher, there's at least two things. One, you've got this bad guy called the Blacksmith, and I will get to him in a second. And he is talking to Frank, and he says something about when Frank was in the army, and he mentions like Chandalar or something. Some foreign country, I don't remember the word that the Blacksmith uses. And then Karen Page is there, and Karen Page says, hey, what's that? What's he talking about? What's going on? And then Frank's like, shut up, I don't want to talk about it. And then he shoots this guy, the Blacksmith, small spoiler there, And then he goes to his house that he hasn't been to in months, and then there's this picture frame, and he punches the picture frame, and there's a CD there that says Micro. Okay, I don't read Punisher comics. I don't like or care about the Punisher. I do know that he was played by Newman in Punisher Warzone from Seinfeld, but this guy, this version of the Punisher, he hasn't been doing this very long. Less than a year that he's been going out punishing criminals. And I was always under the impression that Micro was just somebody that he met while he was being the Punisher, and then he said, okay, you're going to be my new IT guy. You're going to help me do digital stuff that I can't do on my own, and then I will help you do things that you're wanting to do, or something like that. I always got the impression that Micro was somebody that he met during his career as the Punisher. This season is making me think that Micro is someone or something that he knew well before he became the Punisher, and it doesn't explain what this is. What's the significance of this Micro CD? What does it have to do with Daredevil or Daredevil Season 2? We don't know. It probably doesn't have anything to do with Daredevil Season 2. I really felt like a lot of the Punisher stuff, and part of it is that I just don't care about the Punisher, so the first half of the season really kind of dragged for me because a lot of it is very Punisher heavy, and I was just sitting here thinking, okay, when is this going to get good? When is this going to move on to something or someone else so that I can enjoy this show like I was enjoying Season 1? Because with Season 1, it took about 5 episodes to actually introduce Wilson Fisk, and by the time they did, you're like on the edge of your seat like, wow, this guy is really charismatic, he's got a lot of presence, I'm immediately pulled in as soon as I see him on the screen. But even before that, I was really pulled in by all this mystery going on. Like, you've got Wesley, Mr. Fisk's sidekick, secretary, whatever, and he's over here pulling all these strings, and you're really interested in what's going on, and you want to know more about what's going on. With Season 2, there's not a clear-cut bad guy. Season 1, it was very clear that it's Wilson Fisk and his allies, and then slowly over the season, they all fade away or are killed or whatever, betray him, what have you. Season 2, it's very unclear. You've basically got 2 separate storylines going on in Season 2. You've got the Punisher stuff with the blacksmith, and then you've got the Elektra stuff with the Hand and Nobu, who was one of Wilson Fisk's allies from Season 1. He is coming back in this season. Seemingly, he's alive. We thought that he died in Season 1. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of water real quick. It's all raw, guys. I'm not editing at all. So Nobu is back, and he's with the Hand. And so these stories, more or less, they don't really intersect with each other very much at all. At the very beginning, you're thinking, okay, so this crime lord, he's been put in jail, so there's this huge power vacuum. And so you've got the Irish, the Mexican cartel, and these white bikers. They're all trying to fill the void left by Wilson Fisk. And at first you're thinking, okay, this is where the Punisher comes in. He just comes in out of nowhere and just starts killing bad guys. But then we find out that his origin, as far as I know, his origin here is unlike any other Punisher origin that we've ever seen before. And like I said, I don't read Punisher, so I don't know if they've done anything like this before, but at least in the movies, it was more or less just he was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then because of that, his family gets killed in both the Thomas Jane movie and the Punisher Warzone movie. But here, it's sort of like that, but it also, there's kind of a conspiracy going on where it goes a lot deeper than just he and his family were out at the park and they all got killed. At first, we know that there's something going on because the district attorney is really going after the Punisher hard, and we know that she's trying to cover something up, and we don't know what. And we ultimately find out that she was involved with trying to set up a sting operation to nail the Mexican cartel, the Irish gang, and the white bikers. She was trying to nail all of those gangs, and trying to set up a sting operation involving this mystery guy named the Blacksmith. And Punisher, or Frank and his family, they're out walking in the park, and then they all get shot. Frank gets shot in the head, but he does not die. And so she is trying to cover up all this because it's her fault. And so whenever Frank is in a coma, she actually is trying to secretly sign the order to have him not resuscitated. Whenever he goes into a coma, don't try to revive him. But then he comes out of his coma, the nurse who is watching over him loses his job, and then all of the doctor reports on Frank's family, they're all doctored, pun intended. They are all fixed by this guy because she doesn't want any of this getting out that they were actually killed in this gang fight in the park. And she's doing all this basically just to cover her own butt because it's her fault that they died, and she was just trying to I guess, prosecute all of these gangs, and then it would make her career. Somehow, the blacksmith is involved in all this. And I'm going to go with a huge spoiler here. So if you have not seen Daredevil Season 2, I've already spoiled some stuff for you, but turn this video off right now. Clancy Brown plays Frank Castle's colonel, his commanding officer from when he was in the war. And when they do the trial of Frank Castle, where Foggy and Matt are representing him, he is brought in as a character witness. And he talks about how Frank Castle was a good man, and how Frank Castle is the guy that you want at your back, and the Frank Castle he knew is not capable of being the Punisher. And he seems like a really great guy. But then we find out that this guy, Clancy Brown, I don't even remember his character's name, he is actually the blacksmith. And he is bringing in all of this heroin in the city, and he's actually somehow systematically eliminating all of Madame Gao's people. We don't even know how he got his foot in the criminal underworld in this show. That's not explained. We don't know how he formed his criminal empire. He says at one point that one of Frank's fellow soldiers came to him and said, "How can I serve you outside of the war?" I don't know if all of Frank's fellow soldiers said, "You know what, the war's over, let's all become a crime lord, let's all work together and bring heroin into New York City." That's a little weird, and I think I googled this. That's a cat making some noise over there. I googled this character, and apparently in the Punisher comics, he was somebody who was sneaking cocaine into or out of Vietnam. Okay, that's not explained here. We don't really get an insight into his characterization, and I'm still a little fuzzy on if the blacksmith, if Clancy Brown somehow orchestrated having this meeting at this park because he knew that Frank and his family was going to be there and he wanted to kill Frank, or if it was just this huge coincidence that Frank just happened to be at the park where this guy that he used to know was setting up this sting operation where he wasn't going to show up, and then all of these people were going to die. It's either this amazing coincidence that Frank was there when someone that he knows was setting this meeting up, or the blacksmith set the meeting up himself at the park because he knew that Frank and his family were going to be there, and he was hoping that Frank would get killed. Either way, it's not explained. I don't think it was ever explained who set up the meeting. As far as I know, it was the district attorney, but I may have missed something. This may be one of those things where I'm complaining about something that was actually explained in the show, but as far as I know, the district attorney set up the meeting, and so if that's the case, then it is a huge contrivance, and if that's not the case, if he did set up the meeting hoping to eliminate Frank, it's not explained why he wants to eliminate Frank. Why would he want to kill this guy? Because as far as Frank knows, he's a good dude. After his family is dead, he talks about, okay, if you want a character witness, bring in my former commanding officer. He's a good guy who will speak for me. So Frank doesn't seem to have any knowledge of his former commanding officer being the blacksmith. So why would the blacksmith try to have his family eliminated? It seems like a really gigantic, huge plot contrivance. And then, towards the end of the season, once Karen, by this point, she's working for the Bulletin, where Ben Urich used to work, she's investigating Frank Castle a little bit more, and she more or less accidentally finds out that his commanding officer is the blacksmith, and then she is being taken hostage by Clancy Brown. He's got a gun on her, and he says, okay, get in the car. They get in the car, and then she finds out, okay, the CD is in the car, and Frank liked that CD, so he put the CD back in the CD player, so that means that he's about to attack us. Okay, how does Frank Castle know that his commanding officer is the blacksmith? He just suddenly finds it out by magic? There's one point earlier in the season where he's fighting a whole bunch of the blacksmith's goons, and I think maybe one of the goons, at least one of them, maybe two of them, were Frank's former soldiers. So I guess Frank figured out that, okay, if all of these guys who I was fighting in the war with are working for the blacksmith, then maybe my former commanding officer is the blacksmith. But that's never explained. It's just kind of, oh, by the way, Frank knows that he's the blacksmith now. And that's at no point actually explained to us in any satisfactory way. And I said earlier that it's really hard for me to figure out which plot is the A plot and which plot is the B plot, because we spend about half of this season on the Punisher stuff, the stuff that I don't care about, and then the rest of the stuff, all the stuff with the ninja and Nobu and the Hand and Black Sky. Black Sky was from season 1 and that's brought back in this season. All of that I am much more interested in, but unfortunately it's not as much of a complete story. If you're looking at which one is kind of concluded and it is a beginning, middle, end kind of story, then it would be the Punisher stuff, the stuff that I don't care about with the blacksmith. All of that is kind of wrapped up in a neat, tidy bow, or at least as neat and tidy of a bow as is possible. There are a few dangling subplots like Micro and the Chandelar and all of that. That's left hanging, but for the most part, it's all wrapped up pretty nice and neat. The ninja stuff is not, by any stretch of the imagination. So let me go ahead and talk about the ninja stuff, which is my favorite part of the season, because right around the halfway point of the season, that's really when I started getting interested in this show. And it's not that the first half was bad, it's just that I wasn't as interested in it as I was in season 1, where I thought that the whole show was pretty uniformly awesome and consistent, and the later half of season 2, which I thought was pretty good as well. But basically, in season 1, there was one episode where Stick, who trained Matt when he was a kid, he comes back to town and says, okay, you've got these ninja in your town, and they've got this weapon that they are bringing into New York called the Black Sky, and I'm going to need your help destroying Black Sky. Well, then they find out, or actually Matt finds out, I believe Stick already knew, they find out that Black Sky is actually a little boy, and then Stick, he goes and kills the boy, and then Matt and Stick have a big fight, and then Matt says, I want you to leave and never come back, and then Stick goes and he talks to this dude who's absolutely ripped. You don't actually get to see his face, and he says, is Matt going to be ready for the war? And Stick says, I have no idea. Just a little FYI, we still don't know who that dude is. I remember seeing some people online who had some theories, and it's somebody from one of the Frank Miller runs on Daredevil, but I haven't read any of the Frank Miller runs. I know, I'm still working on reading the pre-Frank Miller stuff, but I haven't gotten there yet. But this season does not tell us who Stick's his ally within this organization. It doesn't tell us who that dude is. We don't know at all. But anyway, Stick comes back, and also Elektra is in this season. I haven't even gotten around to talking about Elektra, so I should probably talk about her first. Elektra is someone who Matt dated in college, and she was very briefly referenced in season 1, and she comes back here, and she says, I need your help. Roxxon is doing some weird, shady stuff, and I made some investments with them, and I need your help stopping them. And Roxxon, they were a corporation that was mentioned in Iron Man 3, and they're in the comics, and Matt basically is like, I don't want anything to do with you. He says that like 500 times, and then he helps Elektra like 500 times in this show. And we find out, see, this is weird. This is where, if this was a TV show that was airing episodes week to week, I would really hate Elektra for like the first 4 months, and then I would slowly get to where I like her a lot more. When she's first introduced, she is only a manipulative jerk. All she wants to do is just play with Matt's emotions, and she seemingly just comes just to screw with his life because she's bored. And that's really all that we get from her. But then we find out that her entire life, she has been trained by Stick, just like Matt was when he was a little boy. And she is actually, spoiler, huge spoiler here, she is a Black Sky. The same kind of weapon that Stick killed in season 1. That's what Elektra is. And I called that like 4 episodes before they revealed it here. I kind of figured, okay, she is a Black Sky because they keep talking about how there's something going on here and she kills a lot, and they can't really figure out why she kills this much or something. They were kind of leading up to it pretty hard. So I figured out that she was a Black Sky. Here's what does not make any sense, okay? In season 1, Stick kills a Black Sky that is in the hands of the Hand, pun intended, and he seems to be the kind of guy who says, okay, if there's a Black Sky out there, we need to kill it and just eliminate it so that the Hand cannot have it. He has known that Elektra is a Black Sky since she was a little girl. So for like 25 years, he's known that this girl is a Black Sky, but then he kills other people who are trying to talk about killing her. He does not want anyone killing her. And then, in the present day, and we don't even know what's been going on with Elektra for like the last 20 years, because Stick, he kills this guy who says, we need to kill the Black Sky. Stick says no, and then he sets her up for adoption with the Nachios family, where she grows up pretending to be the daughter of this ambassador guy. And then we don't know what's going on with her from that point all the way to the point where she meets Matt when he's in college. But presumably, in fact, we are told at one point that when she met Matt, that he was part of the mission. Basically, her job was to get Matt back into this organization that Stick is part of, which is called the Chaste. And the Chaste is basically a group of ninja who fight the Hand. The Hand are bad guys, and they are searching for this weapon called the Black Sky that they can use on the world, and the Chaste are trying to stop the Hand. And Matt was being groomed to be part of the Chaste when he was a little boy, and we got to see some of those flashbacks with Stick in season 1, and then Stick abandons Matt, but then he sends Elektra whenever Matt's in college to go and bring Matt back into the chase. I don't understand, if he wanted Matt in their group that much, then he should have just said, okay, you're coming with me, and we have to train even harder to make sure that your ties to humanity are eliminated. He should have just not abandoned Matt if he wanted Matt to be part of the chase, instead of going through this really long, weird, convoluted con to get Elektra to rope Matt into this group, because that doesn't work. Matt says, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with you, because when he first meets Elektra, it is one of the unhealthiest relationships that you've ever seen in the world. And then later, we find out that there's a little bit more bubbling under the surface with Elektra, and she's actually a little bit more of a likable human being who has complex emotions going on, humanity, if you will. But anyway, so Stick, he kills this Black Sky thing in Season 1, but then we find out in the past that he's actually killing other people who are talking about killing Elektra. He goes out of his way to save her life. And then at one point, she gets stabbed in the present day, and then Stick comes out of nowhere and says, hey guys, I'm back, I'm here to save Elektra's life. And then he tells Matt, yeah, I've known Elektra for years. And then out of nowhere, well, it happens after Elektra says, I don't want to fight in your war anymore. I don't want to do your killing anymore, which is around the time when I start actually liking the character. When we find out that she was actually, it was part of a mission to recruit Matt back into the chase. That's right around the point when I start actually liking her character. But around this point, she says, okay, I don't want to be part of your war anymore. And then Stick is like, okay, we have to kill her. We have to kill the Black Sky. We cannot let her get out there. She's a bad thing. We cannot tame her. I spent years trying to do it. Okay, like 24 hours ago, you just saved her life. Why are you now trying to kill her? At the end of this season, I do not understand Stick's motivations at all. I cannot understand if he's secretly working with the Hand, if he's just messing around with people because he's bored. I have no idea, because he goes from wanting to save Elektra's life, killing people who are trying to kill her, to saying, no, we actually have to kill her right now, to maybe he's just doing that just to lure the Hand out. I don't know. Stick's plans make absolutely no sense. His motivations make absolutely no sense. And then we've got the Hand themselves. They are basically trying to get this Black Sky thing under their control, which they've been doing since Season 1, or they've at least been trying to do since Season 1, although it was a different Black Sky then, and that leaves me questioning how many Black Skies are there in the Marvel Universe, or in this version of the Marvel Universe. It kind of reminds me of the Elektra movie, where once a generation, you've got this super ninja who can do anything. It kind of reminds me of that, where the Black Sky is like this very vaguely defined, we don't know what it is, but it's some kind of superhuman that a lot of these people are referring to as an it, and not even a human being. But there's at least two Black Skies. One of them was a kid in Season 1, and one of them was Elektra, and I'm assuming there's more out there somewhere. But anyway, the Hand, they are doing some weird stuff, and none of it is explained, and I'm assuming that it will be brought out in Season 3. They are digging this gigantic hole in the middle of this lot that Wilson Fisk bought in Season 1, and if you go back in Season 1, there's this one scene where Nobu is spreading out these blueprints and showing some of his fellow ninja these blueprints, and it looks like they're getting ready to dig a giant hole. We get to see that there's a giant hole in the slot. We have no idea what this hole is for. It's never explained. And then also, they got all these like 5 or 6 kids, young people, and they're taking their blood, and the kids seemingly are willingly giving their blood to the Hand so that they can put the blood into Elektra. Elektra gets killed by Nobu at one point, and then Matt goes away thinking that she's dead, and then seemingly Elektra is brought back to life by the Hand using the blood of these kids. That's not explained either. We don't know what these kids were doing, why they were doing this. I'm assuming it has something to do with bringing her back to life, but it's never explained. And this is where I'm saying that this season, while it's enjoyable, and the ninja stuff is my favorite part of the season, it is not a very well-told story, because it's very sloppy. There's a lot of stuff left hanging. Presumably, they are thinking that, okay, we're going to explain this when we get to Season 3. Just a second, guys. Gonna drink another water. Presumably, they are thinking that they're going to explain all this in Season 3 or Season 4, or some other Netflix show like Jessica Jones Season 2 or something like that. And I don't like that, because Season 1 was such a tightly plotted, tightly paced story by itself. It had 1 or 2 little dangling plot threads, but you would barely even notice them when you're watching it. It was very well told, and now it feels like they're just like, okay, now that we've got them, we can just leave all this stuff open all over the place, and we can take as long as we want to tell this story. Season 1 felt like a story. Season 2 feels like it's set up. It feels like a lot of setup. Either set up for a Punisher series or set up for future Daredevil seasons. And I I just don't like that. It reminds me of Christopher Nolan when he was doing the Batman movies. One thing, and like them or hate them, one thing that I do like about what Christopher Nolan, his methodology in making those movies was, he said, when he's doing Batman Begins, he is not thinking about what he's going to do in the Dark Knight movie. He is making Batman Begins right now. He's in the moment making this movie. And then there is a tiny little setup of, hey, here's a Joker card, but it's not setting up plot points in the Dark Knight movie. And then in the Dark Knight, again, he's not thinking about ways that he can set up the Dark Knight Rises in this movie. He's thinking about how to make this movie. And I really think that the people making Daredevil Season 2 could have looked at Christopher Nolan's methodology and his ideology in making movies and said, yeah, we should do that. We should make this its own story and stop trying to set up Punisher Season 1 and The Hand in Daredevil Season 3. And that feels like a lot of what they're doing. Really, when you separate all of this, when you get the Punisher stuff by itself and the Hand stuff by itself, there's very little of this season that's just stuff in this season that is its own thing. It's very little of it feels like it's not set up. And I like this season, and I am looking forward to Daredevil Season 3, but this season is much, much more flawed than Season 1, and I have to say, if I had bullet to my head, gun to my head, if I had to watch either Daredevil Season 1 or Daredevil Season 2, I would pick Season 1 any day of the week. I think it's just a better told story. It's not relying as much on, you're going to go and watch this next season no matter what happens, so we're just going to tie it in with later stuff going on in Season 2. Also, if you don't care about or you didn't watch the Jessica Jones series, there are going to be some references here that you're going to have to get past. Claire, who was Matt's ex-girlfriend from Season 1, the nurse, she mentions stuff that happened in the Jessica Jones series because she showed up in the final episode of that series. She mentions Luke Cage offhandedly, and then Marcy, Foggy's ex-girlfriend, she mentions Jessica Jones. And then in the final episode, we could see Jerry Hogarth, who was a major character in Jessica Jones. Personally, I didn't like Jessica Jones, the series. Didn't really like the character either. That was a series I was just like, ho-hum, this is okay. I watched it more out of obligation than actual interest, and then the whole season I was just kind of like, this is alright. I remember a lot of people at the time it was coming out saying that it was even better than Daredevil, and that really confused me. And now I'm seeing a lot of people say, yeah, it wasn't that good. It was really slowly paced. A lot of the characters were very unlikable, and I was saying that the whole time, and I never did do a video review of Jessica Jones because I figured, what's the point? It took me like 3 months just to get through it, and by then I figured nobody actually cared. But yeah, if you didn't care about Jessica Jones or you didn't watch it, then there are some references here. They're not monumental. It's not like you're going to be sitting there screaming at the TV screen saying, what are you talking about? I don't understand. You could probably just quickly Google, hey, who is Jessica Jones? And then you could figure it out. And this isn't a situation like, say, in the Batman vs. Superman movie or something like that, where they're setting up a Wonder Woman movie, and then you're like, well, if I want to figure out what this is talking about, I have to go and pay the price of another movie ticket and go watch the Wonder Woman movie. Because if you have access to the Daredevil seasons on Netflix, then you also have access to the Jessica Jones season on Netflix. So it's not like you're being cheated out of more of your money, or like in the Marvel Studios movies where there's something that's set up in a Thor movie and then later it's paid off in an Avengers movie or something like that, and you would have to pay more money to go watch the Avengers movie to see the payoff. It's not like that, because if you're paying $8 or $16 a month to watch Daredevil on Netflix, then you're already getting Jessica Jones. So if you are watching Daredevil Season 2 and then you're thinking, well, what's all this about? You could just go watch Jessica Jones real quick, and it's no skin off your back if you do or don't. But overall, I don't think I have anything else to say here. I really liked all the characters still. I like Foggy. I like Foggy the most. He's my favorite character in Daredevil. I always liked him in the comics too, but I really like him here. He is a fantastic actor. I don't know his name off the top of my head. It starts with an E, but I really like that actor. Karen is still kind of, I feel like the show is leaning towards Karen can do no wrong. She can do anything that she puts her mind to. At one point in this season, a little bit of a spoiler here, but Nelson and Murdoch actually breaks up because Matt is being an idiot and he's keeping stuff from Foggy, and he's trying to do too much at once, and he basically lets stuff kind of explode in his face. And so Foggy's like, okay, fine, I'm done with you, we're not going to work together anymore. And then Foggy goes to work with Jerry Hogarth. And at one point, Karen more or less accidentally gets a job working at the Daily Bulletin. I forgot I was going to mention that anyway. And she's working with the guy who wasn't in Season 1 a whole lot, Ben's boss, because we had Ben doing a lot of the newspaper journalism stuff. But he's in this season a lot more, Ben's boss. And basically he offers Karen a job, sort of. Like, there's no point where he says, hey, do you want to work here? And she says, okay. Basically, it's just like, she just kind of slides into it, and she's working for the Bulletin by the end of the season. And I think that that's a good place for her, because when you're going to explode the status quo a little bit and you're going to move all your characters around, you need to make sure that you've got a good spot for all your characters to go. You can't just shake things up and then say, yeah, but we don't really have anything to do with Karen Page, and then you're just kind of having her hang around not really doing anything. So I'm glad that she's still going to be taking an active role in future seasons, as is Foggy, and I'm very curious what Matt's going to do, because I kind of see him, I'm thinking that he's probably just going to abandon his Matt Murdock life and just be more or less the crime fighter all along. He's not really going to be doing any of this lawyer stuff during the day. Maybe not. Maybe I'm way off base here, but I'm really liking that Karen has something to do, and it seems sort of plausible, but at the same time, at the beginning of season 1, we were kind of led to believe that Karen didn't actually go to college, and that she more or less just accidentally landed a job at Lehman and Zach, not Lehman and Zach, whatever the company was that she worked with before she was framed for murder. But it seems like she was more or less just, she's a secretary because she couldn't get any other job. And then now we're told that she was a really awesome secretary at Foggy and Matt. And then we find out that she's actually doing a lot of the legwork on this case for the Frank Castle case. And then she just slides into being a journalist, and she's awesome at it. It seems like they are making her too perfect of a character. And that almost feels false to me, but at the same time, I'm glad that they've got something for her character to be doing and to kind of keep her character busy in season 3. I was kind of wanting to talk about, and I know I've been talking for a really long time now, but most of the time, you see, this season really kind of talks about and explores the whole should superheroes kill thing. And there's that one episode where Matt is chained up on a roof for most of the episode, and they're kind of, Matt and Frank are talking about, you know, this is why Frank kills, this is why Matt does not kill. And by the end of the season, I have no idea where Matt actually lands on the whole killing thing. Most of the time, when a hero is debating the killing thing, most of the time it seems to me that they land on, okay, I'm not going to be a killer. Kind of like in Batman Begins, where at one point, younger Bruce Wayne, not young Bruce, but young Christian Bale Bruce Wayne, he's like, okay, I'm going to go kill Joe Chill, and then Joe Chill gets killed, and then Rachel Dawes basically says, you're a terrible human being, murder is not the answer, and then by the end of the movie, he says, yeah, murder is not the answer. Most of the time, I feel like that's the character arc that a superhero who's kind of on the fence about killing will go through. And in season 1, Daredevil did not kill anybody. He was very meticulous about, I am not going to kill people. And there were people who died, like Nobu seemingly died, but that was not Matt's fault. That was Wilson Fisk's fault. But here, there's a few moments where I'm kind of like, okay, where is he landing on this? Is he going to end up killing a lot of people, or is he just going to say, yeah, if I kill people, it's no big deal, but I'm not going to try to kill people? Because at one point, he pushes Nobu off of a roof, and I guess maybe he's thinking that, okay, Nobu has survived once before, he's not going to die, and then Stick goes and kills Nobu. So maybe he's thinking that he's not actually trying to kill Nobu, but it seems to me that although Nobu does not die at the hands of Matt, that the intention was there, and Matt was trying to kill him. And then there's one point, it's in that episode where Frank and Matt kind of have their little dialogue, where Frank has duct taped a gun to Matt's hand, and then Matt is able to use it to shoot the chains to break himself free, and then when there's like 700,000 gangsters coming at Matt later in that episode, he points the gun, and he pulls the trigger, and it's empty, and then he kind of has this little smirk, and then he starts beating the crap out of everybody. And I'm not sure, did he know that the gun was empty? Because he's got his super senses, so maybe he should be able to feel that there's no more ammo in it. So if that's the case, is he just trying to scare this dude by pointing a gun at him? Or is he thinking, okay, they're all coming at me, I better shoot them, even though 30 seconds earlier he was telling Frank, no, I'm not going to kill anybody, that's not how I do things. It's very confusing, and that gets back to where this season does not have an identity of its own. It's all set up for Punisher stuff in the future, or the Hand and Elektra stuff in the future. And very little of it feels like Daredevil stuff in the here and now, with the exception of Daredevil trying to decide if he's going to be a killer or not. Late in the season, he's telling Matt they need to go after, or he's telling Frank that they need to go after the blacksmith guy, and he's saying, maybe just this once we need to kill. Maybe we need to do it your way. And Frank says, you can't just do it once. Once you cross that line, you can never go back. And then Matt never kills anyone, so I don't know if he's crossed that line or not. If him pushing Nobu off the roof, if that's the equivalent of him crossing the line, or if in season 3 he's going to be struggling with the idea of, should I cross the line? I have no idea. And that's more of a thing where this feels like it's just more setup, and we're going to find out for sure what's going on in Daredevil season 3. Overall, I thought this season was pretty okay. I really like the second half a lot better than the first half, but this season does not stand up as well as season 1, but I am still looking forward to more Daredevil from Netflix. I think this is really solid stuff, and I still like this more than just about any other superhero TV show that's going on Netflix or off of Netflix. So I liked it, and if you liked season 1 of Daredevil, you'll probably like season 2, but bear in mind you will have some issues with it, probably. So those are my thoughts on Daredevil season 2. Hope that you guys like this video, and if you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. Tell me, talk to me, and I will see you guys in the future with some other videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.